Commander Alexis Chen stood at the panoramic window of the United Earth Defense Force flagship Audacity, absently chewing on beef jerky while watching the approaching alien vessels. They were quite the sight, all elegant curves and gleaming surfaces that made human ships look like someone had asked a 5-year-old to draw a rectangle and then launched it into space. "You know," she said to no one in particular, "I always thought first contact would involve more dramatic music and fewer geometric shapes that look like rejected modern art pieces." Lieutenant Rodriguez, her second-in-command, snorted from his station. "Ma'am, I'm getting some weird readings from their ships. They seem to be scanning us." "Scanning us?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Well, I hope they like what they see. I did put on my formal uniform today." The massive alien vessels, 7 of them, moved with an almost liquid grace through space. Their hulls shimmered with what appeared to be some kind of energy field, probably their version of shields. "Show-offs. Commander," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. They're requesting permission to send a diplomatic party aboard." Chen tossed her empty jerky wrapper into a recycling unit. "Well, would you look at that? They have manners. Tell them we'd be delighted to host them, and please, for the love of whatever they consider holy, nobody mention the time humanity nearly nuked itself over a Twitter argument." The alien delegation materialized on their ship 20 minutes later in what Chen had to admit was a pretty impressive display of teleportation technology. The beings before her stood nearly 8 feet tall, with iridescent scales and 4 arms each. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate markings across its scales, stepped forward with what appeared to be a scanning device. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," the alien spoke through some sort of translator. "I am High Overseer Zixatal of the Galactic Federation. We apologize for our thorough scanning, but we must classify all new species we encounter." Chen smiled diplomatically. "No offense taken, though I should warn you, the last person who tried to classify me was my high school guidance counselor, and that didn't end well for either of us." The aliens continued their scans, their expressions becoming increasingly confused, if you could call the twitching of their head frills expressions. Zixatal consulted with his companions in hushed tones. "This is most peculiar," the High Overseer finally said. "According to our scans, your dental structure suggests a herbivorous species, yet we detected animal protein being consumed on your bridge moments ago, and your atmospheric composition. The oxygen levels alone should have created an evolutionary path toward—" "Oh boy," Rodriguez muttered under his breath. "Here we go." Chen's smile never wavered, though it took on a slightly predatory edge. "High Overseer, I think there might be something you should know about humans. We're what you might call adaptable. Very adaptable. Those teeth you scanned, they're actually designed for an omnivorous diet. We eat pretty much anything we can digest, and sometimes things we probably shouldn't." The alien delegation's head frills all flattened simultaneously, apparently their equivalent of a collective gasp. "Impossible," one of the junior delegates whispered. "The classification system has never—" "Been wrong?" Chen finished, pulling out another piece of jerky from her pocket and taking a deliberate bite. "First time for everything, isn't there? Now, shall we discuss why you really came to our solar system? Because those aren't exactly diplomatic vessel configurations I'm seeing out there." The High Overseer's scales shifted color slightly, and Chen knew right then that humanity's first contact was about to go very, very wrong. She'd seen that look before, the look of someone who'd just realized they'd made a terrible miscalculation but was too proud to admit it. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "sound general quarters, and someone get me a coffee. I have a feeling this is going to be a long day." As the alarm began to blare throughout the ship, Chen couldn't help but wonder if other species had made the same mistake, assuming that flat teeth meant harmless. She was pretty sure they were about to learn just how wrong that assumption could be. The diplomatic chamber's tension could have been cut with a knife, though Commander Chen suspected the aliens would have classified knives as too aggressive for a supposedly herbivorous species. The High Overseer's scales had shifted to a deep purple, which she assumed wasn't their happy color. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Chen said, drumming her fingers on the conference table. "Your entire galactic society is based on a classification system that determines species' rights and privileges based on their biological characteristics. Precisely, Zixatal exclaimed, as if explaining something to a particularly slow child. It's brought peace to thousands of worlds. Species are assigned their proper place based on their natural capabilities. Predator species are carefully controlled, herbivorous species are protected and guided, and balanced species serve as mediators. Rodriguez coughed into his hand. And you just assumed we were herbivores because your dental structure, atmospheric composition, and planetary conditions all suggested a peaceful, grazing species. Another alien, who'd introduced himself as Scientific Overseer Krellnan, pulled up a holographic display. You should have evolved into simple gatherers, content to be guided by more advanced races. Chen exchanged glances with her officers. And now that you've discovered we're not quite what you expected. Now, Zixatal's translator crackled with what could only be described as condescension. We must consider containment protocols. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. Chen noticed the subtle shift in the alien guards' positions, the way their weapons, previously held ceremonially, had shifted to ready positions. Containment, Chen repeated flatly. You know, the last time someone tried to contain humanity, we invented nuclear weapons out of spite. Your resistance is anticipated but unnecessary, Krellnan stated. The Federation's methods are quite thorough. Your ships are already disabled by our suppression fields and our forces are moving to secure your major population centers. Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Are you sure about those suppression fields? The alien's confidence wavered for the first time as warning klaxons began blaring throughout their ship. Chen pulled up her own holographic display, showing the status of the human fleet. Fun fact about humans, she said conversationally, we have this thing called redundancy. When something critical might fail, we build backups. When those backups might fail, we build backups for the backups. And when someone tries to shut down our primary systems, she gestured to the display, where human ships were powering up on auxiliary systems that operated on completely different principles than their main power. Impossible, Krellnan's scales paled. Your technology level shouldn't allow— Oh, that's not even the best part, Rodriguez interrupted. Tell them about the Marines, Commander. On cue, the ship shuddered as the first explosions rang out in the corridors. The alien guards turned, confused, as human Marines in powered armor burst through ventilation shafts they'd been quietly infiltrating during the entire conversation. You really should have checked those maintenance robots your scans detected more carefully, Chen said, standing up as her troops secured the room. We figured if you were scanning us, you might try something stupid, so we decided to plan for the worst. It's kind of our thing. Zixatal's composure finally cracked. This defies all classification protocols. Your species cannot be this advanced, this prepared. The system has never failed. Here's the thing about humans, Chen said, walking around the table to face the now restrained High Overseer. We don't like being put in boxes. We don't like being classified. And we really, really don't like being threatened. Your Federation made 3 crucial mistakes today. You underestimated us, you threatened us, and worst of all, you gave us advance warning by being really, really bad at hiding your intentions. Outside the viewports, the space battle had begun in earnest. Human ships operating on their backup systems were proving far more resilient than the Federation forces had anticipated. The elegant alien vessels found their energy weapons significantly less effective against human ships that had been designed with the assumption that someone would eventually try to shoot at them. Consider this a diplomatic response to your containment protocols, Chen announced to the stunned alien leadership. And trust me when I say this is us being nice, you really don't want to see us when we're actually trying to be difficult. As if to emphasize her point, another human vessel emerged from FTL jump right through one of the Federation's supposedly impenetrable shield barriers, proving that humanity's understanding of physics had taken some interesting turns that the aliens' classification system hadn't accounted for. Now then, Chen sat back down, propping her feet up on the conference table. Let's discuss the terms of your unconditional surrender, shall we? The United Nations emergency session looked more like a rock concert mosh pit than a diplomatic gathering. Representatives from every nation crammed into the General Assembly Hall, their usual political rivalries forgotten in the face of an alien federation that wanted to contain humanity. Let me get this straight, the Russian delegate said, rubbing his temples. They thought we were space cows? Commander Chen, now addressing the emergency session, couldn't help but grin. More or less. Their entire society is based on classifying species. They took one look at our teeth and oxygen-rich atmosphere and decided we must be peaceful grazers in need of guidance. Well, the Chinese representative chuckled darkly, I suppose we should show them how space cows really behave. The assembly erupted in a mix of laughter and determined murmurs. The Brazilian delegate stood up. We've spent centuries fighting each other. Perhaps it's time we showed the galaxy what happens when humanity fights together. And just like that, the Emergency Earth Defense Coalition was born. Politicians who had been at each other's throats weeks ago now worked side by side, pooling resources and technology. It turned out nothing united humanity quite like a common enemy who thought they were collectively stupid space herbivores. At Area 51, which, as it turned out, really was full of experimental technology, Project Prometheus took shape. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the project, stood before a holographic display showing their latest developments. The Federation's biggest weakness, she explained to the Joint Military Command, is their rigid thinking. They've classified every species, every technology, every tactic. They literally cannot comprehend anything that falls outside their established parameters. She pulled up footage of the first battle. See how they responded when we used our backup systems. Total confusion. They're like chess players who've suddenly discovered their opponent is playing three-dimensional chess while kickboxing. The new hybrid warfare tactics that emerged were a thing of beauty. Traditional military strategies were combined with approaches that would make any conventional commander have an aneurysm. Space battles became a mixture of high-tech warfare and what could only be described as weaponized chaos. You did what? High Admiral Zhang asked during one particularly memorable briefing. Lieutenant Commander Jackson beamed proudly. We filled defunct satellites with glitter, sir. When their energy weapons hit them, the particles scattered their targeting systems. Turns out their advanced sensors can't handle a disco ball explosion. The Federation's response to these tactics was to send observation teams to Earth to better understand their opponent. This proved to be their next major mistake. The alien observers arrived expecting to find a peaceful world that had somehow developed unusual defensive capabilities. Instead, they found what their subsequent reports described as a death world masquerading as a garden. These humans, one terrified observer reported back, they run for fun. They deliberately raise their heart rates and exhaust themselves for entertainment. Another report noted with horror, they eat capsaicin, a chemical weapon plants evolved to prevent consumption, and they rate how much it hurts them for pleasure. The final straw came when they discovered human extreme sports. The footage of wingsuit flying caused a mass panic in the Federation's Tactical Assessment Division. They throw themselves off mountains, the Federation's chief military analyst screamed during an emergency session. With nothing but thin fabric to glide with, they climb frozen waterfalls, they dive into ocean trenches. This is what they do for recreation. Back on Earth, Project Prometheus continued to evolve. Dr. Tanaka's team had reversed-engineered several pieces of Federation technology and, in typical human fashion, had immediately started finding ways to use them that their creators had never intended. Their teleporters have all these safety protocols, she explained during one demonstration. They won't transport you into solid matter, won't work too close to energy fields, won't move anything they classify as a weapon. So we removed all the safeties and turned the entire system into what I like to call quantum yeet technology. The resulting tactical advantages were significant. Federation ships found themselves dealing with human vessels that ignored conventional space combat doctrine in favor of what one alien commander described as technological insanity wielded by biological impossibilities. When the Federation attempted to blockade Earth, they discovered another unpleasant truth about humans. They got creative when cornered. The Emergency Earth Defense Coalition unveiled their latest innovation, ships that could effectively surf on the energy waves of the Federation's own containment fields. It's basically space parkour, explained Engineer Chief Thompson to a bewildered alien prisoner. You guys build all these nice, orderly energy barriers, and we just treat them like skate parks. The Federation's classification system frantically tried to adapt, reclassifying humans several times in the space of a few weeks. They went from anomalous herbivores to potential threat, to environmental adaptation specialists, to finally just error classification impossible, refer to central authority. As news spread through the galaxy about the species that had not only rejected Federation classification, but was actively turning the Federation's own technological superiority against them, other civilizations watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. "You have to understand," Dr. Tanaka explained to the United Nations, "we're not just fighting their military, we're fighting their entire worldview. Every time we do something they consider impossible, we're not just winning a battle, we're breaking their minds a little bit more." Commander Chen, watching Earth's first full battle fleet launch into space, couldn't help but think back to that first meeting with the High Overseer. "You know," she mused to Rodriguez, "I almost feel bad for them, almost." "Why's that, Commander?" "Because they wanted to contain us before they understood us, and now that they're starting to understand us." She grinned as the fleet engaged their engines, preparing to bring the fight to Federation space. "Well, now they're really going to wish they'd just left us alone." The Battle of Proxima Centauri would go down in galactic history as the moment the Federation realized they hadn't just miscategorized humans, they'd awakened something that defied categorization entirely. The human fleet hung in space like a constellation of methodically arranged stars. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the Audacity, now upgraded with a mixture of human innovation and reversed-engineered Federation tech. The ship's AI, which they'd named Bob, because watching aliens try to process why we'd name a highly advanced artificial intelligence Bob is hilarious, as the tech team explained, displayed the tactical overlay. "Federation fleet approaching," Bob announced cheerfully. "They've arranged themselves in the standard combat formation described in their tactical manual, page 394, paragraph 2. "You know what I love about these guys," Chen mused to her crew. "They literally published their combat tactics, like actual published documents, because they're so convinced their system is perfect that they think knowing their tactics won't help their enemies." The Federation fleet was massive, nearly 3 times the size of the human forces. Their ships moved with that same liquid grace as before, but now the humans knew it was because they used gravitometric propulsion systems that couldn't handle sharp turns. "Time to introduce them to human psychological warfare," Chen grinned. "Bob, execute Operation Earworm." Across every Federation communication channel, a signal began broadcasting. At first, the aliens were confused. The humans were transmitting some kind of rhythmic sound pattern. Then the words began, "Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down." "Ma'am," Rodriguez tried to keep a straight face, "are we really rickrolling an alien invasion fleet?" "Oh, that's just phase 1, Chen winked. "Bob, begin transmission of all Earth's most annoying commercial jingles. You know the ones." The Federation fleet's formation wavered as their communications officers struggled to deal with an assault of Baby Shark, the song that never ends, and every irritating marketing jingle from the past century. "They're trying to block our transmissions," Bob reported, switching to Plan B. Plan B, as it turned out, was broadcasting footage of human extreme sports, competitive eating contests, and parkour fails directly to the Federation ship's visual sensors. The alien fleet's formation broke completely as crew members tried to process humans voluntarily jumping out of perfectly good aircraft. "Now," Chen ordered, "hit them with the real surprise." The human fleet split apart in a maneuver that would have been suicide according to Federation tactical doctrine. Individual ships accelerated to speeds that the alien safety protocols classified as absolutely not survivable by biological entities. What the Federation didn't understand was that humans had been pulling high-G maneuvers since the dawn of aviation, while alien crews relied entirely on their ships' gravitational compensation systems. Human ships were piloted by crews who trained in centrifuges and wore pressure suits designed for exactly this kind of insanity. "They're breaking formation," Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. "Their systems can't compute our trajectories because they assume anything moving that fast must be unmanned." The battle devolved into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Human ships executed maneuvers that made their alien opponents' tactical computers crash repeatedly. The Federation's elegant formation-based combat style fell apart in the face of what one alien commander would later describe as complete tactical insanity. But the real shock came 3 hours into the battle. "Commander," an alien transmission cut through the chaos, "your crews must be exhausted. Surely you'll need to rotate them soon." Chen's laugh echoed across the command channel. "Buddy, we're just getting warmed up. "Hey, anyone want coffee?" A chorus of "yes please" echoed across the human fleet's comm system. The Federation commanders watched in horror as human crews continued fighting at peak efficiency hour after hour, sustained by caffeine and what the aliens would later term pathological stubbornness. "How are they still fighting?" one alien captain demanded. "Their biological endurance should have limits." The answer, of course, was that humans had spent millennia pushing past their limits. While Federation species respected their biological constraints, humans had made a habit of treating their limitations as suggestions. The battle reached its crescendo when Chen unveiled humanity's final surprise. Federation sensors detected a massive energy buildup in the human fleet. "By the Council," the Federation admiral gasped. "They're going to overload their cores. They're suicidal." But instead of exploding, the human ships launched what appeared to be smaller ships. "Did they just launch their escape pods at us?" a Federation tactical officer asked in disbelief. "Not escape pods," Chen transmitted on all channels. "Boarding parties." The Federation had never conceived of voluntary boarding actions in space combat. Their tactical doctrine classified it as too dangerous to attempt, which meant, of course, that humans had immediately identified it as something worth trying. Specially trained teams of Space Marines using modified Federation teleporter technology began materializing inside alien vessels. The Federation crews, who had never trained for repelling boarders because their combat manuals classified it as impossible, found themselves facing humans in powered armor who had specifically trained for zero-G close combat. "This defies all combat logic," the Federation admiral protested as humans secured his bridge. "Your species should not be capable of this level of sustained combat performance." Chen's response was broadcast across the entire battlefield. "Maybe you should update your classification system to include crazy enough to work as a tactical category." The Battle of Proxima Centauri ended with the Federation fleet in retreat, leaving behind nearly a third of their ships captured by human boarding parties. But more importantly, it ended with the galaxy's dominant power facing an uncomfortable truth. They had encountered a species that didn't just operate outside their classification system, it actively defied classification. As Chen surveyed the aftermath of the battle, Rodriguez handed her a fresh cup of coffee. "You know what the really funny part is?" she said, taking a sip. "We haven't even shown them our actual crazy tactics yet. This was just us being nice." "Should we tell them about the plans involving trained space squid?" "Let's save something for next time. After all," Chen smiled as reports of Federation forces retreating across multiple sectors came in. "We wouldn't want to break their minds all at once." The captured Federation admiral, watching human crews celebrate their victory by starting an impromptu zero-G dance party on their ship's hulls, finally understood why his civilization's classification system had failed. You couldn't classify a species whose response to discovering advanced alien life was to figure out how to punch it in the face while playing centuries-old musical pranks. The Galactic Council's emergency session was going about as well as you'd expect for a group of species watching their entire worldview crumble in real time. Representatives from across the Federation gathered to witness video feeds of human warfare tactics that seemed to violate not just military doctrine, but several laws of physics. "They did what with a solar flare?" The Zentari representative's crystalline form flickered in distress. "Used it as a propulsion system," the military analyst explained, their scales a pale shade of terror. "They calculated the timing and rode the plasma wave. They're calling it solar surfing." The council chamber erupted in confused chirps, clicks, and crystalline resonances, the alien equivalent of "what the actual hell?" Across Federation space, stories began spreading, each more terrifying than the last. A human ship, critically damaged and losing atmosphere, continued fighting by having its crew put on spacesuits and manually firing the weapons. A lone human vessel evaded capture by hiding in a gas giant storm system, using the lightning strikes as camouflage for its power signature. The hive mind of Epsilon 9 watched in fascination as humans turned asteroid fields into what they called Space Vietnam. Federation pursuit ships would enter the fields only to find themselves caught in webs of sensor jammers, mines disguised as rocks, and the occasional human pilot who thought it would be fun to recreate scenes from something called Top Gun between the space rocks. "They're not even doing it because it's tactical," reported one traumatized Federation commander. They're doing it because they think it's cool. The stories got worse. A Federation battle group cornered a human supply convoy, only to discover the supply ships were carrying what humans called energy drinks. The resulting battle lasted 3 days straight because the human crews simply refused to sleep. The Federation crews, operating in shifts according to regulated combat protocols, found themselves facing opponents who were simultaneously sleep-deprived and hyperactive. Their biological functions should have failed, a Federation medical officer reported. Instead, they just kept transmitting something called memes and quoting what they called vines. We're still trying to understand the tactical significance of "this is where I'd put my trophy, if I had one." The mercantile worlds, always practical, were the first to break away from the Federation's hardline stance. "Have you seen what they did to the Arcturus blockade?" their representative demanded during a council session. "They turned our own shield technology into something they call a space trampoline and bounced kinetic weapons off it. We're not fighting a species, we're fighting weaponized creativity." The Federation's classification system, the backbone of their society, began showing cracks. Species previously content with their assigned roles started asking uncomfortable questions. If the humans could defy classification, what did that mean for everyone else? "Did you hear about their latest trick?" a Proximan trader whispered in a spaceport bar. "They've started playing something called flight simulator games in their free time. They're turning combat into a competition. They have leaderboards." The Hive Mind Collective withdrew their forces after humans demonstrated an ability to turn any swarm tactics against them. They called it a reverse Uno card, the Hive Mind reported, thoroughly confused. "We still don't understand the reference, but we lost 30 ships to our own maneuver." The breaking point came when humans introduced what they called psychological warfare memes into the Federation's communications network. Alien crews found their tactical displays filled with something called googly eyes and their serious combat communications interrupted by cat videos. "We can't beat them," admitted the Federation's grand strategist during a closed session. "Not because they're stronger or more advanced, but because they're weird." They turned battlefield tactics into an art form, combat into a sport, and psychological warfare into entertainment. How do you fight an enemy that's having fun? Commander Chen, reviewing the intelligence reports of the Federation's growing crisis, couldn't help but laugh. "You know what the best part is?" she told her crew. "We're still holding back. Nobody's told them about NASCAR yet. Or hockey," Rodriguez added with a grin. "Or what humans in Florida are capable of," another officer chimed in. The final straw for the Federation came when humans began offering their services as mercenaries to other species, not for money or resources, but for what they called the experience and bragging rights. "They're doing it for fun," the Federation's high command realized in horror. All of it, the crazy maneuvers, the impossible tactics, the constant innovation in ways to turn our technology against us. They're treating galactic warfare like some kind of extreme sport. As the Federation watched their carefully ordered society begin to unravel, human ships continued their campaign of organized chaos across the galaxy. Each victory spread more stories. Each battle became another legend, and slowly but surely, the galaxy learned a crucial lesson. Never, ever assume a species is harmless just because they don't fit your classification system, especially if that species' response to being threatened is to turn tactical doctrine into an extreme sport and warfare into performance art. The Federation's last stand near Jupiter was less a battle and more an elaborate demonstration of why challenging humanity had been a spectacularly bad idea. Their remaining fleet, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, faced off against what appeared to be a significantly smaller human force. "That's it," the Federation's Supreme Commander scoffed. "That's all Earth sends to meet us?" Commander Chen's response came through all channels. "Oh no, those aren't all our ships. Those are just the ones we want you to see." The Federation's tactical computers suddenly registered movement throughout Jupiter's atmosphere. Human ships emerged from the gas giant's storms, riding the powerful winds like surfers on waves. They'd been hiding there for days, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their presence. "Did they seriously park their fleet inside a gas giant?" a Federation officer whispered. "The pressure alone should have crushed them." "You know," Chen's voice crackled through the comms again, "you guys really should have checked what we did with those captured ships of yours. Turns out your hull technology works great for deep diving into gas giants when you remove all the safety protocols. The Federation fleet's formation wavered as hundreds of ships appeared from Jupiter's clouds, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what the humans had done to the captured Federation vessels. "Are those racing stripes?" the Supreme Commander asked in disbelief. "And flame decals," Chen confirmed cheerfully. "The engineering team got a bit carried away with the customization. You should see what we did to the interior. Ever heard of hydraulics?" The battle that followed would be remembered for generations as both a tactical masterpiece and a testament to humanity's ability to turn anything into an extreme sport. Human ships used Jupiter's gravity to perform slingshot maneuvers that the Federation's tactical computers classified as physically impossible, and why would anyone even try this? Then came the Space Marines using modified Federation teleporters. They began boarding enemy ships in what they called competitive speed runs. "New record," a Marine captain broadcast across all frequencies. 30 seconds from teleport to bridge capture. Beat that beta team." "Oh, it's on," came the response from another boarding team. The Federation crews, already struggling to comprehend the tactical insanity unfolding around them, now had to deal with humans treating ship capture like an Olympic sport. The Supreme Commander watched in horror as his carefully planned formation dissolved into chaos. Human ships were using the Federation's own energy shields as bounce pads, redirecting weapons fire back at their sources and apparently playing something called space chicken with capital ships. "This isn't warfare," he protested. "This is madness." "Madness," Chen replied. "This is humanity." The breaking point came when the humans unveiled their final surprise. They'd taken the Federation's sophisticated AI targeting systems and reprogrammed them to play something called Duck Hunt. "Did that battlecruiser just quack when we hit it?" a Federation officer asked, shortly before their ship was tagged with what appeared to be a cartoon duck graphic. The Federation's morale collapsed entirely when human ships began playing what they called their victory soundtrack, a bizarre mix of classical music and something they termed heavy metal, while executing maneuvers that looked more like dance choreography than combat tactics. "We've made a terrible mistake," the Supreme Commander realized as he watched a human ship do a barrel roll through the debris field, while blasting "Another One Bites the Dust." "You know what your real mistake was?" Chen transmitted as human forces surrounded the remaining Federation ships. "You tried to put us in a box. Humans hate boxes, unless we're thinking outside them, or using them as improvised weapons, or turning them into race cars. Actually, we have a lot of fun with boxes, just not the metaphorical kind you tried to put us in." The Federation fleet surrendered shortly after, unable to cope with an enemy that had turned space combat into a combination of extreme sports, performance art, and what humans called speedrunning. As the Federation's Supreme Commander signed the formal surrender documents, he had one final question. "Why did you paint smiley faces on all our captured ships?" Chen grinned. "Because we could. Also, we're planning to start a racing league with them after the war. Want to join? We're thinking of calling it Fast and Furious Galactic Drift." The look of absolute defeat on the Supreme Commander's face had nothing to do with losing the war, and everything to do with the realization that humans were going to turn their entire combat fleet into the galaxy's most extreme racing competition. And that perhaps was humanity's greatest victory, not just defeating the Federation, but making sure they had fun doing it. 10 years after the Jupiter surrender, the Galactic Council looked very different. For one thing, they'd completely abolished the classification system. For another, the human representatives insisted on bringing snacks to every meeting, which led to some interesting cultural exchanges. "And you eat this ghost pepper voluntarily?" a Zentari diplomat asked, watching Commander Chen, now Admiral Chen, pop one into her mouth. "Want to try?" she offered innocently. The resulting diplomatic incident only lasted 3 hours and ended with 4 species developing a surprising appreciation for spicy food and 2 others demanding military treaties with Earth, just in case humans are contagious. The Federation's former classification archives now contained only one entry for humans. Classification. Don't even try. Seriously, just don't. Diplomatic relations settled into what could best be described as a mixture of terrified respect and morbid curiosity. Other species found themselves simultaneously dreading and looking forward to humanity's latest innovations. The galaxy's first interstellar racing championship, featuring modified warships from the conflict, became the most watched sporting event in known space. "You have to understand," a Hivemind ambassador explained to their newly evolved colony, "humans don't just think outside the box. They forget the box exists, turn it into a rocket, and use it to deliver pizza across star systems." The former Federation Supreme Commander, now working as a cultural liaison to Earth, partly as community service for the whole invasion thing, summed it up in his final report. "Humanity defies explanation. They turned our war into their entertainment, our technology into their toys, and our defeat into a sporting league. They are simultaneously the most terrifying and most amusing species in the galaxy. My recommendation, just smile, nod, and hope they invite you to their next barbecue. Also, avoid anything they describe as mild. They cannot be trusted with spice classifications." As for Earth, well, humanity took their place in the galaxy exactly as anyone who knew them would expect, by completely ignoring conventional protocol and somehow making it work anyway. "You know what the funny part is?" Admiral Chen mused during the 10th anniversary of the Jupiter surrender, watching ships from a dozen species compete in what humans had dubbed the Galactic Grand Prix. "What's that?" Commander Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, asked. "They're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. They still think we have some grand military secrets we never revealed." She grinned. "They'll never believe that our greatest weapon was just being our weird, wonderful selves." And somewhere in the vast archives of the former Federation, a final classified note remained. "Warning to all future civilizations, do not attempt to classify humans. They will take it personally, and then they will make it fun, and that somehow is even worse."